Republican leaders sitting in the White House. And they had made us all kinds of promises about how we're going to have fiscal responsibility and budgetary discipline and strong defense and so forth and so on. And then in 1994, much to the surprise of a lot of people, on account of having got a little foretaste of what was in store for them if they let people who go down the so-called liberal, the now purely socialist road, what was in store for us, the people of this country took their first action, and they reacted against all of that. And lo and behold, we woke up on the morning after the election in 1994, and after 40 long years of domination by a single party, the Congress had finally, in the House of Representatives, turned over control to somebody else. And everybody was thinking, well, this is it. We're going to move forward down that road to fiscal responsibility. We're going to move forward down that road to a budget that's going to respect our obligations to our future and not build up debt until the future of this country is drowned in it. Now, y'all, here's what we've got to recognize. We waited for 2 years, 4 years, and looked like a little hope for a while, and then we saw after 6 years and 8 years and 10 years that nothing like this was happening. And then came those years when I was starting to walk around in the airports and stuff, and people were coming up to me because I was well known in those days as a Republican, and they were asking me, as if I was in the Congress responsible for this, they were saying, what are they doing? They said we were going to have restrained budget, and now we're producing the largest deficits this country's ever seen. They said we were going to have restraint, and now we're adopting the same Christmas tree approach to budgeting that the other side always adopted, hanging little ornaments on the tree so we could go back to our constituents and say, see what I got for you? I got this program, and that program, and the other program. Yay, vote for me. And people were upset, and they were angry, and they were disappointed. And the end result was that that party that they had trusted lost power in 2006. And sadly, as a result of that loss of confidence, this nation in 2008 embarked upon a period that, if we do not awaken and turn ourselves around, is already marking the end of our republic, of our Constitution, and our way of life. Yep. That's where we are. So, the one moral that I would draw from that story is that it's time we woke up. And it's time that we realize that, just as Bill Johnson is doing, it's time that folks with the common sense and with the conviction and with the principles, we've got to step forward. You've got to step forward. You've got to take your independent convictions and faith and mind and follow them through, no matter what, with courage in the political arena. You can't afford any longer to look at a label and think, that satisfies me. You can't afford anymore to look at a few words and say, that satisfies me. You have got to listen to the heart. You've got to look at the background. You've got to see the conviction. And then you've got to stand forward without exception. Don't vote for the money. Don't vote for the pundits. Don't vote for the power. Vote for this nation and settle for nothing less than the best that we can offer to make sure we live through this crisis. What is going to be the best? Who is going to provide us with something that really meets the occasion? First of all, I have to say that I think that if we're really going to get folks who can answer our needs, the first thing we need to do, and it was one thing very important that Bill said today, and that he has lived out in the course of his life with integrity, we have to get people who will keep their oaths. It's really not a hard thing to understand. And here's a question I have for you. What is the oath that is sworn by all the officials in this country? Doesn't matter what level they're taking office at. It's an oath that is sworn by people on city councils and county councils and mayors and governors and state legislatures. It doesn't matter if it's the state level. It's sworn by the congressmen, and it's sworn by the senators, and it's sworn by the president, at least in part, because it's required by the Constitution that every single official of any note in this country has to swear an oath to uphold, protect, and defend, to preserve and respect the Constitution of the United States. That is their first duty. Their first duty. And I think it's about time. It's about time we stop letting them manipulate us. Yeah. Stop letting them use us by reaching out and saying, I'm going to give you something, and I'm going to give you something, and I'm going to give you something, and then you should vote for me. I think the very first question we ought to ask for all these people who are promising to do things for us, we ought to ask them first and foremost, what have you done to keep your oath of office? Because believe me, what on earth makes people believe that politicians who will not keep their promise to God and the whole people of this country with respect to the Constitution will keep their promise to do anything for us? Amen. It can't be. If they won't keep their word to respect the integrity of the Constitution, then they won't keep their word to do anything else either. The very first thing we demand is not something for ourselves, but something for our country. And the most important thing we can do for our country is to make sure that Constitution and the government of, by, and for the people it represents does not perish, but is passed on to generation after generation from now, just as it has been from before, so that we can be as other generations were, proud as we walk into the spiritual future that awaits us, that we have bequeathed a worldly future to our children and grandchildren that still includes the heritage of liberty. I think that's the first promise they ought to keep. Have they been doing that? No. Nah, I'm afraid not. As a matter of fact, they've been taking advantage of the debased understanding of our political life in order to act as if the Constitution doesn't matter anymore. I won't go into this at great length, but I'm involved in a controversy over one clear, unambiguous provision of the Constitution with respect to the qualifications for the highest office in the land. And I'm looking around waiting for some of these politicians to speak up on behalf of the Constitution. Haven't heard a single word. No. Doesn't matter what label they wear, what office they occupy, they won't speak up. They won't say, this is an issue that just involves the integrity of the Constitution, and we must take care of it first. They've left it last, they've left it out. Yep. And lo and behold, as we watch what's going on, they'll say, well, we've got to do something about this economy, and therefore we can disregard the Constitution and take over private corporations and private banks. We've got to do something about this economy, and therefore we can disregard the Constitution and begin our takeover of the healthcare sector. What on earth authorizes the President of the United States to fire the head of private companies? What on earth authorizes the federal government to step in and begin to take over the regulation and the salaries and the terms on which doctors shall handle their patients and the private sector shall deal with the health of this country? Where in the Constitution do they get the right to use government power and government coercion instead of respecting the liberty of the people of this country? Amen. It's not there. Nope. So what are they doing? They are seeking to bribe us with promises of some wonderful utopian future, when the only thing we're really getting is a Constitution that no longer respects the role of the sovereign people of the United States. When will we wake up? So, I think it's time we looked at things in light of the fact, too, that even folks, there are some people who would get up and they would give a speech, rousing speech, much like I just gave. And they would look at us and they would take stands on the fundamental issues of constitutional principle that just don't make sense. People are always asking me, for instance, why it is that I would come to Kentucky and be working for Bill Johnson when Rand Paul is running. And Rand Paul, they always say, is a conservative just like you, and he believes in fiscal responsibility, and he believes in the Constitution, they say. And I have to shake my head and say, well, does he believe in the Constitution? I mean, I know he says so, and I know that his father has said so over the years, and in some ways it looks like they do. But then I listen to what they say about the issue that is in many ways